I'm just admitting everyone from the lobby in now. Give me one moment.
Okay, thank you.
And Heidi, just watch if I end up joining again, because I don't
Panel
really
chair,
wanna hold
everyone
the
from the
phone.
lobby is admitted into the meeting.
Okay, look, thanks, Heidi. Look, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this public meeting of the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel. My name is Graham Brown and I'm the acting chair of the panel today. With me on the panel today is Cara Crasson, who is an expert member of the panel, and Peter Cotton, who is the community representative. The panel pays its respects to the traditional custodians of the land in which we gather and to its elders past, present and emerging. I note that the minutes of the panel held on 19 April 2023 were approved and have been posted on the council's website. The only item on public agenda today is an item which was deferred from the meeting of the panel on 15 February. It is DA 2022/0499, 1102 Barrenjoey Road, Palm Beach, relating to the construction of shop top housing. Registered speakers are allowed 3 minutes to address the panel. However, that time may be extended at the discretion of the chair if the application is made. Speakers are required to use respectful language, and I would ask all those members who are listening in today if they could set their computer to mute until they're asked to speak to the panel. There are 5 objectors registered to speak, and there are also 5 registered speakers for the applicant. The first registered speaker is Prudence Wrightstrand. Ms. Wrightstrand, are you there?
Hi, yes, yep,
Can you proceed? Thank you.
certainly. So I'll try not to be too repetitive, but from our perspective, we feel like we're just assessing the same plans as the last panel. 40 centimetre height reduction and some deleted columns is kind of all we can see as change. So it seems to us that this new design completely ignored the initial panel request from the 15th of Feb meeting on point A, which, just to paraphrase, you asked for amended plans that reduce the overall height, bulk and scale, including removal of the roof, and then consideration was to be given to materiality, upper level setback and a form of the roof to achieve an upper level that is more excessive and overall more compatible with the surrounding development. So I guess when we look at the panel minutes on the 8th, it looks like that point A was just completely ignored. I didn't see any mention of, you know, in the minutes of what happened there, and it's not really clear what changed between the public meeting that we had on the 15th and what was happening in the 8th. But anyway, nonetheless, I wanted to say that we still maintain that the development is way too big, tall and bulky. And the sentiments are shared by the 70 other people who submitted over the 7-day holiday period. You know, obviously this is so important to the community, and I just say that this is the same community that the developer tried to argue was supportive of the development in the last meeting. We still ultimately think height breach can only be approved if there's a diminished floor area and a substantial setback. I just wanted to reiterate our legal standpoints. The lawyer finds clause 4.6 unfounded due to insufficient planning grounds. She highlighted again that council had erroneously tried to justify the breaches by suggesting the DA is a better environmental planning outcome than the original, which is not a test, and it shows a misinterpretation of what the requirements are. She also argues in, you know, documentation which you have, that clause 7.7 of the geotechnical hazard zone cannot be satisfied due to the lack of details, which we have repeatedly requested. The rock boulders from day one, we've said, have sat on our boundary and they actually go underneath our house. So that's been a natural concern. And we highlight that without satisfying that clause, there's actually no jurisdiction to approve any DA, is her view. So naturally, we consider all relevant parties liable for any damage to our land and house, given what we believe is an inadequate attempt to satisfy basic DA requirements. But I'll leave that to our geotech Warwick, who is on the line as well. So I guess just quickly wanted to highlight that this, you know, new height is still 30% breach on my calculations. 1102 was knocked back at 29% breach in the Land and Environment Court, as you know, due to lack of environmental planning grounds. And, you know, in particular, that was assessed against the other 3-story buildings around it and still found to be too big and bulky. And obviously we're 2-story buildings. So I think in closing, I just say that obviously it's been a long and arduous journey for everyone, but we still don't think this DA should be approved. We don't think the developer's done enough, to the point that you made in the 15th panel meeting, and we urge you to please assess this for what this actually is, which is a grossly inappropriate building for the environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rothschild. Any questions from the panel members?
No.
No.
Thank you. The next speaking I have is Warwick Davies. Mr. Davies, are you there? Yes,
Yes, I'm ready to speak. I'm being heard, am I?
You are.
Thank you. I did appear at the panel meeting on 15 February and presented a significant contribution, as I believe, to my views and the issues on geotechnical grounds. So I won't traverse those at all. They are entirely unchanged and still entirely relevant to what I'm saying in summary today. All of the reporting that I've prepared on this matter remains on the table, as far as those reports do address my issues and present different matters as time has progressed over the several years I've been attempting to grab a hold of this on behalf of the adjoining owners of 1100, my clients, Prue and Nicholas. At the present, I'm speaking today with the only knowledge of anything beyond what was available on the 15th of February, being a further letter from JK dated 8 February, which wasn't available to me at the time of that particular presentation. I'll speak to it now very briefly. It is a very limited amount of additional investigation, as JK have referred to it, of the boundary ground conditions on the southern side against 1100 Barrenjoey Road. And what they've done there is to determine the thickness of the shotcrete facing that was constructed at the time when that bulk excavation to create the current site conditions was carried out, and the nature of the ground behind the shotcrete. So there is some information, and I have to acknowledge that it is factual information that does assist in knowing the conditions immediately on the boundary and underneath the boulders in question. I think the major issue for me that still remains completely unanswered and unresolved in any further way from the 15th of February is the attitude of addressing the risk issues to the boulders and to the property of 1100 Barrenjoey Road in particular. JK haven't revised their risk assessment to any way that I'm aware. I think it should be reviewed and revised as a requirement of the council prior to any approval for this particular application, because it doesn't properly address in its current form, which was released in the JK report in late 2020, so a couple of years gone, and there's been a lot of water under the bridge and no attempt to revise or rethink the risk assessment. I still think it is flawed, in not properly informed by a thorough information in order to make judgments on the likelihood of the hazards that JK identified occurring, and therefore having to be taken into account in the construction and the design. In summary, I don't believe JK have done enough or have any information which is enough to make proper judgments on the boulders at this stage, and that includes defining the extent and nature of the boulders within the property on 1100. I have done an investigation there, but very limited. I think it needs more to be certain about the risk issues, and until that's resolved, my conclusions presented at the last panel meeting are unchanged completely. And just to restate those, I believe this application is not in a current state to be approved as is. I believe the engineering must be developed further so that the council has a proper basis to know what The designs and the controls need to be locked into the approval, not left to the future to a construction certificate. And to cover that properly, my previous conclusion remains the same now, namely, I believe only a deferred commencement approval could be given based on the status of the current application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davies. Panel members, any questions?
Not for me.
Okay, thank you. The next speaker I have is Nicholas Sproats. Mr. Sproats, are you there?
Yes, I am. So I was just taking myself off mute there, Graham.
Okay, thank you. Can you proceed? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to say that we've had the council officer over to our residents a number of times regarding this development. However, on a number of occasions at those visits, the duty council officer for the development said that this application was a tricky one as there was already an approval in place for the site, implying that this DA 2022/0469 was not really being considered as a new DA by the council, but a DA compared to the approved one. I continue to fail to see how this approval in place means that this new DA would be able, if it was approved, to more egregiously contravene the planning instruments for this location and site. As some of the legal and planning advisors have noticed on numerous times, particularly regarding the statement of environmental effects, this is not the test. In the last panel meeting on the 8th of March this year regarding this DA, the architect for the owner of the site said, and I quote, "Nobody wanted this built." This referring to the approved DA application number 119/14. I think that is a completely baseless statement. The approved DA is some metres lower in height, 4.5 metres less in depth, and that 4.5 metres leaves a lot to play with in terms of setbacks to Barrenjoey Road and subsequent compliance. It is terraced back on the top floor and it's not contravened the parking requirements. Considering that the hundreds of submissions in opposition to this design of the current proposed building, application 469, mostly want a building of lower height, less bulk and scale, and further setbacks and parking and traffic compliance, I would say that there are a lot of people that prefer this smaller development is built. If there is an implication that people don't like the facade of 119/14, then facades are easily amended by genuine 455 amendments, as opposed to the 455 that was lodged in September of 2021, which council swiftly rejected because it wasn't a genuine 455. The panel should reject this new DA as it further contravenes all of the planning instruments for the site. The owner purchased the site with the existing development approval in place. However, this approval gives the new owner no rights to approval of a completely new non-complying DA. The building of the existing DA with facade modifications would be a better outcome for the village, the neighbours, the visiting public, the local business owners and the residents at large. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sproats. Are there any questions from the panel?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Robert McKinnon. Mr. McKinnon, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you proceed? Thank you.
Shall do. I'm Secretary of Palm Beach Wild Beach Association, a community organisation that's over 100 years old, representing about 400 members. But I'm also speaking in chorus with all those who've gone to the trouble to make 174 submissions against this development. And there's been a common theme throughout. There are too many breaches of the prevailing LEP and DCP controls, especially with regard to style, height, bulk, building alignment, and relative lack of landscaping. And these submissions have been made by well-respected people, including architects and town planners, as well as the owner of Barrenjoey House. The other theme has been the disrespect shown to Barrenjoey House by largely ignoring the Pickwater DCP, which, among other factors, requires commercial developments to conform to the seaside village character of Palm Beach and create a buffer zone between the heritage item and the development. Whilst others may speak on technical issues, I want to focus primarily on matters of principle. And in doing so, I'm surprised that a respected community organisation like ours has not been approached by the developer or his architect to obtain our views on this development, and I believe that comment also applies to the owners of all the surrounding properties. The proponent of this development has been relentless in putting forward one revised plan after another, all of them with flagrant disregard for the building controls. At no stage have any valid reasons been argued under clause 4.6 of the Planning Act other than commercial gain. It's been a war of attrition against the council, who appear to have caved in, and those who care about preserving this part of Palm Beach. I won't mince words. This development is an existential threat to the character of this historic precinct of Palm Beach. As mentioned, it's now clear that council staff have surrendered. They've proved that with a supplementary assessment report addressed to this panel dated 13th of April. This, I might add, followed a closed meeting between council staff and the proponent on the 8th of March. Been proven again with a revised heritage assessment referral response of the 3rd of November last year, where miraculously, after some minor tinkering, the revised plans were considered satisfactory, despite the proposed building's 30% breach of height controls, which will allow it to tower over Barrenjoey House like a schoolyard bully. And the essential buffer zone between it and Barrenjoey House has not been addressed. We therefore reject the validity of both of these reports, especially when one considers the expected life of the proposed building, which could be anywhere between 50 and 100 years. That's a long time for Palm Beach to bear a scar. Northern Beaches Council are rightly proud of winning the AR Blewett Award, and we congratulate them for their achievement. Our understanding is that the AR Blewett Award winners are process-oriented and care about their communities. But when it comes to this DA, we're disappointed both with the processes followed and Northern Beaches Council's apparent deafness to the community. With regard to council processes, I recently saw a letter from a council planner to a property owner in Palm Beach who proposed to demolish an old house and replace it with a larger one over several levels, with a traditional pool and cabana and exceeding a large number of building controls. The planner's letter to the proponent was blunt. There are three choices: withdraw the application, modify the design to comply with the controls, or submit it with a certain knowledge it'll be rejected. Why hasn't that happened with 1102 Barrenjoey Road? All developments, no matter who they are from, should be judged with the same standard of rigour. In closing, we, the Palm Beach Association, call upon the panel to take three actions: to reject this latest application as it is and ask the developer to resubmit plans that more closely meet building controls, whilst factoring in the concerns expressed by the community. Seek the proponent's independent heritage consultant to report on the new plans, as no credence can be attached to the last heritage report. Likewise, engage an independent geotechnical consultant, not a partisan one, under orders from the developer, who can make appropriate recommendations on the impacts of the proposed excavation on all neighbouring properties, including Barrenjoey House. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. Panel members, are there any questions of Mr. McKinnon?
No.
Thank you. The last person I have is Mr. Bill Tulloch. Mr. Tulloch.
Thank you, Graham and panel. Yes, my name is Bill Tulloch. I'm an architect. I've been instructed by my clients, the owners of 1110 Barrenjoey Road and also 1110A Barrenjoey Road to address the panel today. My client's properties adjoin the subject site on the eastern side, that is the high side behind the subject site. I've submitted a short written submission to the panel dated 18th of April. That appears on Council's DA tracker now of 19th of April. My clients have multiple concerns: adverse visual impacts, adverse engineering impacts, and adverse view loss impacts. I contend that the proposed development fails to meet Council's planning controls, the objectives, and the merit assessment provisions relating to height of building and setbacks. I contend that the bulk, scale, density, and height of the proposed development is excessive and inconsistent with the established and desired character, and it overwhelms the heritage list of Barrenjoey House. There are three areas of contention. First is the unresolved issues identified within the panel's consideration back in February 23 that others have already discussed. in relation to overall height, bulk and scale, the 4-metre high mansard roof, the incompatibility of the 4-metre high roof formed the Barrenjoey house, and the excessive plant enclosure at the roof. None of those matters have been addressed within the amended plans, as far as I can see. Second is the lack of geotechnical analysis and adequate consideration to meet council's policy objectives to the eastern 13-metre high retaining wall structures. A lot has been discussed, obviously, from the neighbours to the south, and I agree with those considerations, but nothing has really been properly assessed relating to the walls to the east of the subject site. I say that because most of the considerations by JK have been relating to the requirement of having fixed devices underneath their property to support the retaining wall structures. That is unacceptable to my clients and will never be allowed to occur. Therefore, there is no structural solution, geotechnical solution to the eastern boundary wall currently. The third issue is really the adverse amenity impacts, including view loss caused by the non-compliant height form, which really has not been addressed at all. The bulk and scale issues, my concerns relate obviously to the 45-metre long monolithic structure that is positioned 1,400 millimetres above the ridge of Barrenjoey House with minimal or no side setbacks. My concerns relate to the insufficient separation to Barrenjoey House and to all neighbours' boundaries. And my concerns also relate to the poor visual outcomes relating to the poor roof design and the poor outcomes not only from the streetscape, but also the appearance of the roof form and the plant enclosures from multiple vantage points above the site, looking down onto the vast open plant zones, effectively the fifth elevation. A more skillful design outcome, to my mind, would have been a twin pavilion design solution, matching heights with Barrenjoey House and a more compliant envelope to height controls and envelope controls. My written submission identified the problems, but also potential solutions that I hope the panel might consider today. First of all, the reduction of the proposed roof heights to match the ridge heights of Barrenjoey House. Now, that can be easily achieved by reductions of the story heights at all levels, which I consider excessive, and deletion of the roof parapet. A reduction of 1,400 mils can easily be occurred by doing those four things. The relocation of the roof plant doesn't need to be where it is. Most of it can be in a basement. My clients want a deletion to the stair, so it's a non-accessible roof. And I think the hood detail over the window openings facing the main road really dominates the skyline, particularly when it's in a non-compliant height zone. I feel that a landscape 3-metre zone to all boundaries is essential, but a proper landscape zone, it hasn't been achieved. So I ask the panel to consider requesting these more precise outcomes to the applicant rather than leaving it in a more generic state. Perhaps that may now be unacceptable to the panel, but it's one approach that I suggest the panel might wish to consider. The geotechnical issues, really, as I stated before, there is no viable solutions to the 13-metre high wall to the rear of the property. All the solutions that relied upon by JK rely on anchors underneath my client's properties. I'm instructed to state that anchors under my client's property will never be permitted under any circumstances. So therefore, the geotechnical report has no viable engineering solutions listed within the report or subsequent letters of advice of how they're going to construct this wall. It's just left in the air effectively. Now, furthermore than my written submission, my client's geotechnical engineer, Tony Crozier, as I'm sure you know, is another senior acting geotechnical engineer in the Northern Beaches, raises very serious concerns on these matters. He can't be with us today, so I've extracted his comments into my written submission. I agree with Warwick Davis' early comments to you relating to the southern boundary, but what he said about the southern really could easily be related to the eastern boundary as well. But at the end of the day, it's an easy fix. And I disagree, however, that these matters can be left to some deferred commencement or even a certifier. It needs to be fixed now. There needs to be a revised geotechnical report covering all these matters to resolve all the problems. It can't be just left a 13-metre high wall structure with no consideration of how this is going to work. Now, I believe there's a serious concerns for the stability and protection.
Can I ask you to wind up, please?
I will. Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
will. I'm nearly finished there. Sorry about that, Graham.
No, that's okay.
That's okay, nearly done. I contend that serious concerns are held for the stability and protection of both my clients' property, and I'm not alone in this concern. Tony Crozier has exactly the same view. So the amenity impacts, other than the things that I've already discussed, is really there's been no consideration of view loss. It's obviously well over control. It's well over height, but there's nothing within the latest amended plans to discuss what view implications are going to be, what loss is going to occur of the land water face interface, nothing. So I cannot assess that matter, only to say that it obviously must have some impact. The extent of it is uncertain. So to conclude, my clients asked the panel to seek further precise amendments to the proposed development as outlined within my submission here today, including a detailed geotechnical report that addresses my client's obvious geotechnical concerns and all neighbours. If the panel are of a view that this is not achievable through the panel process, then my clients ask for the DA to be simply refused for the reasons stated within my submission and for other submissions made to you today. Thank you very much, Graham, for that.
Thank you. Panel members, any questions of Mr. Tulloch?
No.
Thank you. We'll now move to the applicant speakers. Mr. Boston, are you going to lead the group?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, I will be, and we've got representatives from both the architect's office and also client representatives here simply to answer any questions that might arise. They're not proposing to make any verbal submission to the panel unless required.
Can I ask, there are a number of issues that were raised as part of the submissions by the residents and their experts. Can I ask if you could address, not you specifically, but other members of your group, the question of character and how this application fits into the Palm Beach character, the clause 4.6 and its validity, the geotech issues, including the need for rock anchors. They're just some of the things that I've noted that have been raised, but if you could address those matters, and then I'll ask the panel if there are other issues that they would like addressed by yourself or by someone from your team.
Sure. No, thank you for that. As the panel's aware, this application has been before you previously. We just reiterate our position in relation to the draft conditions as contained within the original assessment report, that we raise no objections to any of the conditions as written. I'll start in relation to just the amended plans that have flowed since deferral of the previous matter. And contrary to what's been sort of discussed this morning, the flat roof option certainly was explored, and there were two options forwarded to council and from council through the panel. And ultimately it was determined that the pitched roof form was more appropriate in terms of providing for a sympathetic relationship, not only with Barrenjoey House, but also in achieving the seaside village character, which the Palm Beach locality statement seeks to achieve. The amended plans have been uploaded to the portal, as has an updated clause 4.6 variation request. For the panel's benefit, the changes to that 4.6 variation request were limited to a reference to the most recent architectural plans and updating of the various images contained within the 4.6 variation request as they relate to those updated architectural plans. In response to the concerns raised by the residents, as the panel's aware, this application has gone through an extremely rigorous assessment process that has involved assessment by the Independent Design and Sustainability Advisory Panel. In fact, it's been to the panel 3 times. It also involved an assessment with Council's independent consultant heritage advisor, Robert Moore, who would be the preeminent expert in terms of heritage on the Northern Beaches. He's been part of Council's consultant team or since the inception of Pittwater many years ago. To that extent, there needs to be some comfort obtained from the rigour that this application has gone through in terms of its assessment, and the fact that it has been assessed by independent bodies and ultimately will be determined by an independent state-appointed planning panel. In relation to the character issue, we certainly rely on our previous advice in regards to the desired future character statement for the Palm Beach locality, the requirement to achieve a seaside village character. And as the panel will be aware, there's certainly a number of examples to the south of the site along Barrenjoey Road where historically Council has accepted 3-storey forms where the upper level was contained predominantly within a pitched roof form. And that is the fundamental difference between what was previously approved on the site and what is proposed now. The advice that we received from the start and the advice that we continue to receive is that in relation to the development's relationship with Barrenjoey House, that the pitched roof form is certainly the more sympathetic building topology to be adopted. We've been very mindful in terms of adopting the gutter line of Barrenjoey House in terms of the gutter line of the proposed development. And as the panel will be aware, there's been a number of design iterations which have broken the facade of the proposal down into elements which are certainly more sympathetic or characteristic with the form and scale of Barrenjoey House. And that's included the more recent amendments which have seen some void spaces continue through to the roof or through the roof form itself, and a reduction in the number of support posts on the individual balconies. We say that what is proposed is consistent with the desired future character statement and certainly achieves the DFC better than the previous approval on the site. In relation to the clause 4.6 variation request, as I said, that's been updated. It speaks for itself in terms of addressing the statutory reporting requirements for a clause 4.6 variation request. We say that we have demonstrated that notwithstanding the non-compliant building height elements, that the zone objectives are achieved, and that notwithstanding the building height breaching elements, that the objectives of the height standard are also achieved. The environmental planning grounds don't solely rely on betterment in terms of a comparison between what was previously approved and what is proposed now. There's certainly environmental planning grounds also going towards the topography of the site, the previously excavated and disturbed nature of the site, which makes the extent of building height breach greater than what would have been the case if this was an undeveloped plot of land, and also the flooding impediment, which have all dictated to a certain extent where the ground floor levels and the subsequent floor levels sit, including the requirements to comply with the ADG and SEP 65. To that extent, we believe the clause 4.6 is well founded, and that that there is no jurisdictional impediment to the panel endorsing the document as submitted and uploaded to the planning portal. In relation to the geotechnical concerns, the panel will recall that There were a number of addendum reports submitted just prior to the previous panel meeting. They went towards further investigation in terms of what actually lay on the shotcrete wall, and those addendum reports have been uploaded to Council's DA tracking system, and we'd expect as a minimum that the draft conditions would incorporate those additional geotechnical reports as well, because I don't believe that they did form part of the draft conditions as originally put. The subsequent geotech investigation dated the 8th of February 2023 by JK Geotechnics does go specifically to the issue of rock bolting and the fact that there are two options in terms of being able to retain the excavation. One involves rock anchors. The other one involves supported soldier piers. We do not rely or propose to rely on rock anchors in terms of the panel's assessment and determination of the application. And to that extent, we're certainly not seeking any owner's consent from any adjoining property to be able to undertake the works as proposed. I believe I've covered the issues, Mr. Chair, that you asked me. However, I'm happy to augment or supplement any response to the panel as you might see fit.
Thank you, Mr. Boston. I'll just ask the panel if they have any questions they'd like to ask you or your team. Peter, anything you need to ask? I think you're on mute, Peter.
Yeah, sorry about that. Have all avenues of looking at options for reducing the height being explored? There's been mention about reducing floor-to-floor heights and specifically the ground floor to first floor height reduction possibility. Just thinking about ways that we can get the height down to a level that's a bit closer to Barrenjoey House, and obviously then less impacting on neighbours' views, and also the bulk and scale generally as a proposal.
Sure. Yeah, look, the amended plans that have recently been uploaded to the portal provides for a 460mm reduction along the front parapet edge, which is the edge which is breaching the height limit to the greatest extent. So there has been a reduction in relation to that particular element. The ground floor levels have been determined to a large extent by the flooding affectation on the site, where council's controls require the retail floor space to be at the flood planning level, apart from the first 6 metres of the tenancy, which can be lower. So whilst it looks like the first 6 metres has quite a generous clearance, it's the rear or the back portion of that retail tenancy, which we say is now down to what would be considered a minimum ceiling height to be able to get services in and be able to utilise that space effectively for a non-residential use. The floor space, the floor levels above that, dictated obviously by the ADG and the new building commissioner class 2 requirements, where it's looking like the 3.1 ceiling to ceiling moving forward may not be enough to be able to get the services in that are now required, but we're confident that the building can be constructed at the ceiling heights proposed, which are compliant with the ADG. So it really comes down to then just the parapet at the roof level, and as I said, we have reduced that down now to as much as we consider appropriate, and there's also a balance there between lowering it down so that there's a good proportion in terms of that pitched roof form compared to the opening in that pitched roof form or the hooded opening. And the advice that we've received from both ours and Council's Heritage Advisor is that where it currently sits in its lower height is acceptable, but any further reduction would not be.
Okay, thank you.
Cara, any questions for you?
Yes, thanks, Graham. I guess the main questions that I have are relating to how or what information you might have submitted in response to the last decision of the panel on the 15th of February 2023. So at the moment, I can see that you've submitted amended plans, and you refer to a clause, an amended 4.6 variation as well. I'm just keen to understand if you submitted any other documentation that specifically address those reasons for deferral from the 15th of February. And I'd probably just ask you to answer that in relation to the fact that, well, from my perspective at least, that decision was the last time that I, as a panel member, deliberated on this matter. The supplementary memo provided by council, I think, incorrectly indicates that the panel met on the 8th of March to deliberate on the amended proposal, in which, whereas I attended the first part of a briefing meeting. So there wasn't any deliberation, at least from my perspective, in relation to that. So the last deliberation I had on this was the 15th of February. And I'm just keen to understand, other than the amended plans, which don't specifically address those reasons for referral, reasons for deferral, whether you submitted any further response to those reasons for deferral, and if so, what that contained.
Sure. No, thanks for the question. So, look, we certainly, in response to the initial deferral minutes, we gave, I guess, the panel back through council the plans that they were looking for in terms of a flat roof sort of outcome for the current proposal and what that would look like. We also provided alternate plans in terms of the height reduction that we believed we could achieve with the current pitched roof form, including a reduction in the number of support columns. So we did provide those flat roof design options back to council, and it's my understanding that both those options were discussed in that briefing session to the panel members on the 14th, I think it was, or 15th of February.
So there hasn't been any further information submitted in response to the matters from the 15th of February minutes.
Let me just pull it up.
I mean, we've got a set of amended plans that's attached to the supplementary report that you've submitted. I think it's.
Yeah, so I'm just looking here. So the
7th,
the minutes of the panel just asked for amended plans that reduce the overall height, bulk, and scale, and amended plans that reduce the verticality in terms of the balcony columns, and amended plans that minimise the rooftop structures. So those plans were forwarded to council or to the panel via council.
Okay, so you haven't responded to the reasons for deferral from the 15th of February. You responded to some of the comments that were in the minutes.
No, yeah. So we responded to the minutes of the 15th of February.
Oh.
Yeah, so we provided those amended plans, including a flat roofed option. So we have responded to those, yes.
But via plans, not via a written response to the matters specifically. I'm just trying to understand exactly what information you've submitted.
Yeah, sure. Look, it was under a cover of email, yes. So, but it was primarily the plans that were resubmitted.
And you mentioned in your address that you submitted, and I might have misunderstood you, but I thought you said 2 flat roof options. At the briefing meeting on the 8th, council's officers presented one potential, like an early flat roof scheme. I don't recall there being two flat roof options there. Did you submit two, or?
Look, there was only one submitted in response to the minutes, but what I can say is that we had we previously lodged a modification application for the previous consent, which included works to the previously approved flat roof option. And it was following submission of that we had significant pushback from council and their advisor and DSAB. And that application was subsequently withdrawn on the basis that we would lodge a new application for a new development, so not a modification, that incorporated a pitched roof form. So we certainly already had all the architectural plans for a flat roof form. So when I say there were two sets of plans, there was the previous ones that were submitted with the mod, and then we doctored, if you like, the plans that the subject of the current application to see what they would look like from an elevational perspective with a flat roof on it. So, but no, it was just the one set of flat roofed plans that was submitted in response to the panel's minutes.
Yeah, okay, and they're not attached to obviously this supplementary assessment because you pursued the alternative amended plans rather than having the other submission.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No, thank you for that.
Anything else, Cara, you need to ask?
No, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Peter, you?
No more.
Anything more?
No.
Look, that's, I don't have any further questions. The process from here on is that the meeting will close at about 12:50. The panel will deliberate on the application based on what we've heard today and what we've heard from the council officers. We will likely have a decision that would be placed on the council's website, hopefully within 48 hours of the decision of the panel. Can I thank everyone for their attendance? And if you could leave the meeting, we'll have a short discussion with the panel members. But as I said, hopefully within 48 hours, you'll have a decision on the council's website. So again, thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much, members of the panel.
Thank you.